Good morning, everyone. All my sliders got mixed up, and we're using different inputs, so let me know if it is too loud or too quiet as we go along. As well, I've dropped the latency setting down, hopefully to close the gap between when I say something and when you hear it, so that the chat and any bugs that you may report, I can actually see before we've moved on. I've gone to the second setting, which I'm not sure how much latency that's going to be in, but when I just checked before I started the stream, it still looked like it was several seconds. The ultra low latency is probably not worth it, but if we find that this is still too long, we can go to that. What was the other thing I wanted to say? I don't remember. But so I will be writing bugs down as we go. Obviously, this is a bit different than what we're doing. My feeling is that you shouldn't do a daily for longer than an hour, and then we'll do triage afterwards. There's not enough content here to do an hour. It's probably going to be more like 15 minutes, but we'll talk our way through it as we go, and then we will talk through a triage afterwards. Hopefully that will be useful to some people, and you can see what the beginning of a conversation system looks like. Let me just rearrange a little bit so I can make sure that I've got my camera aimed at something useful. We'll do this. So for those of you that aren't familiar, this is the Unreal editor. Most of the conversation system is written in Blueprint. But I've written a little bit of C++ to support something with the UI. We'll talk through that as we get to it. And with that, we will get started. Oh, one bit, that was the thing I was going to try to remember to say. A bit of legal boilerplate. If you provide a piece of feedback in the chat or in the comments afterwards, you are giving that freely without expectation of compensation. And so, if I do the thing you say, you can't come back later and be like, but why didn't you pay me? Because this is a public thing, and you were giving that feedback freely. I hate the fact that I have to say that, but lawyers and legal and so on and so forth. Yes, we are making so the secret announcement is that we're launching an NFT, which is going to be an MMO. Okay, we are not launching an NFT that's going to be an MMO because that's stupid and impossible. Okay, well, let's just get started, and then I will try to do two things at once. Anyone who's done anything with High T NFT does have a nice ring to it, though. So anyone who's done anything with Unreal will recognize this is the third-person starter level. Some of the bugs that we're going to file today are going to literally just be tasks, but I actually don't think that is a terrible way to approach this. I've run projects in their late stages as if everything is a bug and everything goes through the same bug tracking software. In an ideal world, you would have everything mixed together so you could prioritize tasks against bugs. Anyway, so we'll just file as we go. So right off the bat, probably need some real level art. We need a real model for the player and a real model for the NPC. My plan is to use MetaHuman. At the moment, I don't actually know how to get something from MetaHuman into the game, but we'll figure that out. As well, we have console controls. Where's my console? Where's my controller? But this is just, we don't have any way of initiating a conversation with a controller. So let me just remember how to get my cursor back. Let me make a note. Controller controls. So if I'm typing, which is that's because I'm writing a bug down. It's always exciting to watch someone type. MetaHuman is the new body and face morphing tech that Unreal is launching. It's actually pretty impressive. If you look up MetaHuman on YouTube, you can probably see a lot of examples of it. I don't believe it does any kind of cloth or like it basically everyone's wearing a polo shirt at the moment. So I think you have to provide your own body morph stuff. Okay, let's get started.
Hello, this is the first time we have spoken. I can show italics and bold. Can I show your name in italics? Oh no, that doesn't work. Well, we could do some special tags, like this, which could work, but is annoying. Here's an image and some text after.
Okay, so I'll walk you through this. The conversations I've written are entirely testing conversations. I apologize to any writers that made the mistake of joining me today because the writing is terrible, and also I may give you PTSD when we look at the tool pipeline, which is an apocalypse. Okay, so I'm just going to start spitting out bugs here. Couple of things. So we are resolving player name, but I'm not actually currently resolving the tags behind the scenes, so it's just using the default text. Also we're going outside of the box. So dialog leaving box, and oh, my frame rate is really bad as well. Okay, why is frame rate is really bad. So right now it is so it advances on a click. And it doesn't auto advance on the end of the conversation, on the end of the dialogue. So player name. So what it's actually doing is player name is actually pulling out of a data table. What's missing, the bug is that, or the missing tasks, depending on how you want to define it, is that I'm not actually filling out the data in that data table. So that's how I've decided to do all the tags. Is there will be a tag table that just needs to be resolved when the conversation starts, or possibly actually it probably needs to be resolved every time a speaker changes. So that's also will be used for any other things you need, like if we need any numerical stuff embedded into the text, that would be there as well. But that's also not automatically resolving. We have disabled lines, so like I can't click this, it's logic disabled.
How about this?
And I don't know why that line is so much quieter. Okay. Yeah, definitely the frame rate in the conversation is really bad. So I'm going to have to look to see what's eating my frame rate. So we have 3 conversations written. Again, they're all test style. So this one isn't...
This is the second time. Let's test staging and cuts.
So this is intended to be for showing how different staging and different cuts would work. We have no staging implemented yet. Staging would be where we would move to a stage, there would be set cameras and we move between different cameras.
This This line should be an L cut. The audio continues longer than the camera. So we should have changed cameras by now.
So if you watch any of the various YouTube channels or TikTokers who pretend to be multiple people, they use these two kinds of cuts a lot to really underscore and strengthen the implication that there are actually two people talking. An L cut is where it's basically it's the shape. So an L cut is where your camera cuts before your audio finishes, and a J cut is the opposite. It's the way basically it would look in your editing software. A J cut is the opposite, where the audio starts before the camera cut. The reason I have this is because it is going to require some shenanigans in the back end, and I'm afraid it's going to maybe mess up the data structures. And before I start the process of making the tools pipeline less of a disaster, I want to have as much of this kind of core functionality in as possible in order to make sure that we don't write a tool and then have to rewrite the tool because we've had to change the data format. And as I'm looking at the frame rate, it's looking to me like my custom tags is what's dragging the frame rate down, because this doesn't have any custom tag and the frame rate looks fine. So I'm just going to make a note.
This is the line whose camera we should have switched to. This line should be a J cut. Audio from the next line audio should have started before the camera changed.
So I did that just to show that right now I'm not stopping any audio. I need to get that working, but I would like there to be the ability to have overlapping audio. That can be useful to have two people talking over each other. You don't really want the same person talking over each other. But it would be helpful. The other thing that is missing right now is we don't have the ability to do three-way conversations, which I think is pretty important. And that's why I said that the tags probably need to be resolved on each speaker switch, because if you're going to use anything where you're referring to the speaker's class or their name or whatever, you need to resolve it with the possibility that the speaker might be changing in the middle of a conversation. So. But we don't have that support for that at all right now. And obviously, since we don't have real people, we don't have lip syncing. I think those are the things that I've noticed before that have kind of pre-populated the bug tracking software with. And if anyone shouts anything into comments, I'll add it as well. And then the last conversation is just
we have spoken many times.
So this is the point of this being to resolve the tag so that we could actually show it. Typically, if you are writing something like this, you would write it in such a way that the player doesn't, or the speaker doesn't need to actually say the number out loud, because you're not going to be able to do that at runtime. But you would write it in such a way that you could kind of you would speak around the insertion, the tag insertion, but then just have the tag insertion in the text, which is what I did, except I should say many times instead of many time. So none of this currently works, because if I do it again...
We have spoken many times.
Okay, so let me make... It actually is a different bug. Okay, we need to reset count. Doesn't work. Speaker count tag doesn't resolve. So typically the way, actually let me just leave the run and I will show you how it is done typically in Unreal. So they use they use something called Dialog. What are they called? I think they're called Dialog waves. So Dialog waves are they have the concept of a speaker and a directed at, and then they can have multiple different lines embedded based on that. So if you have woman talking to man, woman talking to woman, and so on, so you can do multiple things, which is a necessity for different languages. I don't actually see where the lip syncing would be embedded here, but yes, you would typically, if you can, do different lip syncing for different languages. The way that it's interesting. So the technology that BioWare has been using up until Anthem, so they use it on Andromeda, it is very good at accuracy on lips, but gives relatively dead faces. Hence the, my face is tired, because you have to kind of correct for that after the fact. So I am indeed using behavior trees for dialogues. So lip syncing it's interesting. Facial animation is hard. Lip syncing isn't actually hard. Sorry, I'll just answer questions here. I don't believe that the conversation system in Frostbite for Inquisition handles interrupts at all. It actually doesn't have the ability to advance lines. And if you think about why it is, what's going on there, is if you imagine that you're linearly going through a conversation, well, if you're linearly going through a conversation serially, then you can't do more than one thing at a time. So you have to finish a line of dialogue before you move on to the next line of dialogue, which doesn't allow you to have an interrupt or a J cut or an L cut, potentially. So in order to have an overlap, you need to kind of either let the previous line of dialogue go fire and forget and just ignore it, or you need to somehow allow multiple lines to play at once. But the problem with just doing that without restriction, which is what's happening right now, and this is that you can just, let me just show you the problem of that, is that
Hello, this is the first time we have spoken. I can show italics and bold. This is the second. Can I show you?
so not particularly understandable.
You should have changed cameras by now, like this, which could work but is annoying. Here's an image and some text after.
Yeah, you could add it as part of the line. You could bake it in, but then you don't have the ability to handle any sort of logic in the background, which you probably do want. And you potentially want the player to be able to do that as well. It also potentially gives you, because you may not be able to handle locus easily then, because now you might have different speakers and different genders mixing together. It still could be done. You could hard code the whole works of it. You might just need a lot of branching on that initial line. And then you also probably need to make sure that the handoff between that previous line where the interrupted is baked in and the next line where the real thing is continuing is super smooth without any sort of hitch in between, or you would need to find a natural pause where that hitch could occur. And there probably is a little hitch that's going to occur there. So you could do it, but not without its struggles as well. And ideally, you want to not have to do that kind of hackery in order to get things working. You want the writers to be able to write and then be able to send that conversation in some form to voice acting to get it, bring it back, process the lines, and it kind of just be done. And then, so we'll talk about now, is probably as good a time as any to ask all the writers to please cover their eyes, because why don't we look at the way this actually works? So this is, as someone asked in chat, this is in fact done with behavior trees, which is, if you actually search Unreal Conversation System on YouTube, you pretty much either find behavior trees, or you find something much simpler than that. So the way that a behavior tree works... Oh, here it is. Okay, so the way the behavior tree works is it travels through the tree piece by piece, and it actually is really quite a good good system for typical conversations. So you start the conversation, the selector node basically says you got to pick one of these, and then the blue is what's called a what are they called? A decorator node. I don't know why it's called that, which is basically a bit of logic, and it says, okay, so is the speak count 1? Do this one. Is it 2? Do this one. Is it anything else? Do this one. And then, so it's like, okay, this is the first conversation, so we speak the first line. The first line is this, and as long as we're here, why don't we, I don't know if people can see that. So this is how the tags work. It's you got, is that bigger? Yeah, it's a bit bigger. So it's kind of cumbersome syntax, but it works. And so I haven't figured out how to do loopbacks as of yet, but I think I can make it do loopbacks. Behavior trees don't support loopbacks by default. So actually, in an update, I actually managed to figure out how to do the player tags. I updated my automated tag system to allow style to be embedded in it, which actually allows fairly robust tagging. So rather than, unfortunately, I kind of fell down a rabbit hole with the custom tags and spent more time on that as opposed to the actual conversation system, which is why we have robust player tagging and formatting and less of this. This is Unreal Editor. I'm running it through the compiler right now because I had to write some C++ code to make the tagging work. Okay, but here, so this is not awful, though I will point out that right now the text is here, and then it also has a dialogue wave, which is the audio. And the problem with that, the reason it's that way right now, where's my dialogue tree? Here it is. Let me move them beside each other. Ah! That's not it. Where's my dialogue tree? Let's close some of this. Close. There it is. Okay. So the problem with the way that it is right now is that dialogue waves actually have a place for text as well. I don't know if anyone noticed. There was a tiny bit of subtitles below the lines, which would have said this. This is some text for the test, because that's actually automated subtitles. Yeah, I looked at those, and either they're not. So the ones that were on the marketplace either are not. Their feature set is not well communicated. So none of them seemed, on the surface at least, any more robust than what I have written in probably 20 hours of coding. I could be wrong, but that was my initial reaction to them, which is a very old school programmer reaction of I can do it better myself, but I couldn't see anything on the surface that actually was what I was looking for, and I didn't want to get into a situation where I was having to stick my arms directly into the guts of someone else's implementation. But it probably would have been the right way to go, but it's not the way we went. So now we have this. So as I was saying, the problem right now is our text and our dialogue waves are separate, and they should be together. But the problem with that is you really want to be able to see the text here in the dialogue tree, and if everything's inside the dialogue wave, you totally can't. So this sort of gets us into the beginning of why this tool chain is actually really bad. If you just had something simple with no audio, then you would be fine, because you would just have, it would just look like this. You could even maybe have the text display over here, because you can actually even do that somehow. I can't remember how, but yeah, I don't recall how. But so that's the first problem with this as a tools pipeline. But the thing that actually is the horrifying bit of this, using the behavior trees for conversations, and you can see it even if you do the tutorials on YouTube, is that the way that replies are handled is frankly a disaster. And it needs to be wrapped in some sort of tool. Because the way you do replies is, because you have to wait for the player to actually pick a reply, the branching off of the chosen reply and the replies themselves are disconnected from each other. Mine is actually even more disconnected because I needed to put logic on the replies. But let's take a look at why this is bad. So to add a reply in this dialog system, you literally have to do this. You have to say, I'm going to add some replies, which is this reply list start. Then you add all the replies, which is this whole bit here. It's actually, sorry, this whole bit here. And then you have to say, I'm done adding replies. Then, after you are, then you sit there with the replies sit on the screen, and when the player picks one of the replies, you set an index or something to that effect, which is what I do, and then you have to have a selector that says, well, what did they actually pick? And then you have to run totally separate code saying if they picked reply 0, reply 1, reply 2, reply 3, which means that if I was to rearrange, so if I want to rearrange this, I have to change these numbers, the reply index, in order to update the order of this reply list. Or actually, that's not so bad, because I can actually just, that's not true. Because I actually have an index in here, I actually can rearrange these as long as these indexes remain unique. As someone asked about loopback, at the moment, so by default, by default, AI behaviors do not support loopback. So if I was to go and say, in this case, I'm going to do this, and then I want to go back here, it won't say, you can't create a graph cycle. So I do need to figure out a way to allow for yeah, so exactly right. The problem here isn't the actual underlying architecture. The problem is the tools pipeline. Because the way that you have to add a node and the way that you have to deal with it is simple, but a lot of steps. And every single step has a percentage chance of introducing a bug. Yeah, I think the reason that... so Unreal still maintains the stance that we are an engine for all things, and as a result, we don't provide these sorts of things. You can, as someone said, you can find some things on the marketplace. I think the other reality is that what you actually want from a dialogue system is quite variable. The visual novel engines, Twine, have figured this out to a large degree, but currently, as written, this supports only supports silent protagonists because it has no concept of the player speaking. You could easily add that, but that's yet another vector of bugs. So when I talk about a tools harness, what we really need from a tools harness is something where you can view the dialogue in a more cohesive way that doesn't look like this. This is fine for someone that's debugging the logic, fine. But it's not something that a writer is going to be able to read through in a rational way, not without rewiring their brain to a fairly significant degree. But more importantly than being able to look at it, they need to be able to work with it. So they need to be able to add a spoken node without having to create a dialogue wave in order to handle the speaking. They need to add replies and have the logic connect the reply to the reply reaction without them being completely divorced from each other. And there needs to be loopbacks of some sort, which actually I'm going to make a note. Maybe there's just a way I can say, I know what I'm doing, let me do it. Yeah, but I wouldn't. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm a programmer theoretically, and I wouldn't write with this mess at the moment. I mean, I'm doing it for debugging purposes. But the reason why I haven't jumped feet first into an editor is because I want to get the functionality nailed down as much as I can before I do that, so that it doesn't have to get blown up time and time again. Okay, so that's basically what there is here, and that took half an hour, which is actually not bad. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring up the bug list. I'm planning to do it in 3D for now, because one of the major purposes of this, from my perspective, is to build a conversation system for use in something with a little bit more rationality behind it. So high T on the high C's is really the build a conversation game, build a conversation system game. So we'll do it in 3D. We'll get it there, and then once we have that, then maybe we'll make something that actually needs a real conversation system. Or maybe this is the best game idea ever. I don't think so, but okay. So let's bring up the bug list, and you might be thinking, since I talk about triage so much, I probably have a really great piece of bug filing software, but no, we're using Unreal. Okay. So let's talk triage. So I've pretty much boiled this down to its basis components. Just assign to urgency, severity, and then we've got some weights here. So I'm going to just start. Well, obviously, all of these are. Whoops. Yeah. You're not being helpful. Cancel. There we go. Okay, these are all assigned to me because I'm the only one. And then I'll just show you. There's a few other things, department and some other things that are not autofilling right now. But okay, so urgency is how quickly this needs to be done. Urgency and severity are not actually connected to each other. If you're about to go into VO lockdown and someone stutters in one of your lines, that's a pretty minor bug, but it's very urgent. So urgency is, when does this need to be done? I'm basically going with 4 urgencies. Blocking means this is preventing people from working. High meaning this is more important than your typical baseline work. Medium is this is your baseline work. In fact, I might just change it to be baseline work. And then low is this should be done after you have completed your sprint or other tasks. So the toolpath is terrible is high. I'm going to put it as a high, but as I mentioned here, it's blocked by the core functionality of the conversation system. So that is, I'm just going to make a few notes. Oops, once I remember how to do, there we go. So create dialog wave. Also okay, so the fact is that, and okay, severity, 4 severities, can't ship is what's considered usually an A or a critical. What that means is the game literally could not ship with this bug. So that is a very restricted number of things. This is something that a lot of people have a lot of trouble with. This means that either the game is crashing or it fails cert. The fact that the toolpath is terrible, I'm tempted to make can't ship, but we'll make it won't ship, which is you will not ship the game unless this is fixed. Then we have shouldn't ship, which is this is definitively degrading the quality, and then quality, which is something that would be considered a D or a D level bug, which is basically this is something noticeable, but it's not really, it doesn't matter that much. But you know, if you have 100 of these, fixing 100 of these would be worth it in order to bring the quality up. So we'll put the toolpath as a won't ship. So now we're calculating weights. I'm using so I'm weighting urgency a lot more than I'm weighting severity, which is typically what you want to do. But there are scenarios under which you might want to change that. So, okay, this bug is open, and it is blocked. Oh, I actually put blocked here. Actually, we'll put it in blocked. Okay. So, 3-way conversations. Make a note. Need to resolve, or may need. So, we probably won't do triage on every single one of these. This is just more to get people to understand some of what I'm talking about when I say triage, and you can see why it is no one's favorite thing. Okay, so 3-way conversations, I think, is probably, this is just work, so it's medium. This is also won't ship. This is open. Okay. Startup screen I threw in here just because this is a real broken window that is a thing that you can fix. This is the screen that would show when you start the game. Having this really makes your game seem honestly 300 or 400% more real, because you're not just dumping directly into dumping directly into the game. Much as I actually feel like it would help, I think we'll just leave this as a background. Okay, so as I showed, currently sound doesn't stop on going to the next line. So that, I think, is something that needs to be done as well. So medium, what you'll notice, as is typical, is that a lot of things are going to end up kind of in the middle of this. We're going to end up with a ton of mediums. But this one is blocked because it's blocked by the fact that we never stop sounds. So effectively overlap works right now. Okay, so this is setting tags on Dialog start, and I'll just make a note here that may need to do each speaker change. Okay, again, this is just work. These are nothing stopping us from doing that. Real level art. This I might do really soon, not because it actually is affecting, but because I'm kind of interested to just see if I can actually make something that doesn't look like garbage. MetaHuman NPC and a MetaHuman player, both medium. Okay, lip syncing is blocked by actual heads, which is the MetaHuman. So ideally, in a bug tracking software, for those of you who've never done this before, there would be a way to actually link this bug to the things that are blocking it, which you can do in any reasonable bug tracking software. But we're not in a reasonable bug tracking software. We're in an Excel spreadsheet that I made in 15 minutes. So controller controls, that needs to be, that's a can't chip. This would actually fail cert. Also, I'm inclined to raise this, but we'll go through and we'll get everything set up, and then we'll talk a bit about how you nudge things around. So honestly, that still won't ship. I almost made that a shouldn't ship, but no. It's okay. So I probably should look at what's going on with the. Currently, the frame rate was so bad in the conversation, in that first line of conversation, that it would actually fail cert. I'm not sure why, but I better look at that before we go on, because, I mean, honestly, at least at BioWare, if in production, your two tools were Excel and PowerPoint. So get used to them if you're doing that. Okay. Oh, and also, won't ship. And I just realized we have J-cut, L-cut. Okay. Because auto advance. So. Yeah. Why are you being like that? It's perfectly serviceable. Oh. Yes. Why don't I just do... Yeah, let me see. Can I? Whoop. Yep, I can. How's that? I just remember to put it back, but... So that one line, for some reason, I probably want to exported it. Did something wrong. That is, honestly, I don't really care. So medium. That might be. So this might be. This is really linked to tag resolution, probably, unless I broke it in some other way. Okay, so core functionality. Okay, so normally, and for functionality. So normally you would expect that when the bug got filed that these would at least be set up. So you wouldn't do this sort of cleanup pass as you went, but this was just a bit cleaner way to do that. But now we can do this and sort. Oh, no, not by that. Sort by triage weight. Smallest to not smallest to largest. Why would I do that? Largest to smallest. No. Okay. So typically, bunch of different ways that you could do a triage, and you're probably wanting to do all of them. But usually to start, you start by doing your highest things and making sure that they have everything needed to get them going. Then you might go back and say, well, this person has too many things. Maybe we should pass these around. Doesn't really make a lot of sense when there's just one person. And you might make sure that everything... And then you should also just generally make sure that your bug list is in a reasonably tidy state. When you only have, what do I have here? 20 some bugs, 20, maybe 20 exactly. It's fine. But you know, when you get into the thousands or tens of thousands of open bugs, you better be trying to maintain a bug list that is relatively clean. One thing that I haven't implemented in this bug tracking software is the ability to see how old a bug is. I have the fields, but I don't know how to auto-populate them on modified and on file in Excel. I might figure that out if I'm procrastinating actually working on this thing. But what you probably want to do is have some way to triage your oldest bugs. And something that I've thought about doing, but I've actually never done, is having the bug weight go up as it gets older. Yeah, so player pronouns. So I'm going to do player pronouns using the player name, the tagging system to start with. The problem with doing it that way, I'll do that as a start. The problem with doing that way is that's not actually very supportive of loc, because with loc you are going to want to, let me just actually add a big thing about loc. With loc, you're going to want to have entirely separate lines depending on the gender of the player. So one thing that people might consider doing when they're writing is write one line, and you can actually see that Unreal supports this. Write one line that is potentially used by a male speaker or a female speaker speaking to a male player or a female player. I don't think that... So in English, that's going to potentially save you tons. But in a lot of languages, you have to... Every single one of those four things is potentially different. So, in my experience from a loc perspective... In my experience from a loc perspective, what you actually want to do is fix the genders of the speakers, not the player, the speakers, and then have them, and then write entirely separate. So if you have a male speaker and a female speaker, just write separate lines. Don't try to save on word count, because it's not going to save you anything in the long run. That's interestingly, when you look at what Unreal is supporting, they haven't taken that same philosophy. But so in order to do player pronouns properly, you should have I think you should have a separate line, because in foreign languages, chances are it's not just the pronoun that's going to change based on gender of the player. It's going to be potentially verb tense or word usage or other things. So so I'm going to do it with a tag just to start, just as something that I can use to test the tags. But in the long run, I need to actually get loc up and running. In fact, and that's going to be on my list. Okay, so where was I? Oh, yes. So we were just starting to actually go through and... oh, yeah, right. Okay, so frame rate's really bad. Yeah, I better look at that right away. Why is this... Sorry. Yes, please. Please, auto wrap. There we go. So better look at that right away, because if my entire rich text field system is not going to be functional because it's too slow, I better know that now. It's probably just something stupid that I'm doing in the actual C++ code. No, I don't know what it would be. Okay, so, but the tools path is terrible. So it's blocked by a bunch of medium level bugs, which to my mind means that what we need to do is we need to find those bugs and up their priority as well. So 3-way conversations, and I'm just going to make a note. Upped. So one thing you'll notice, or one thing I've noticed, is that in video game writing, you don't actually refer to the player by their pronouns very often, because most of the time you're speaking to them. And because you're speaking to them, you don't use their pronouns. You might say you, but you don't actually use he, him, or she, her, or they, them. It's very rare. It's usually only in conversations that are happening between two characters about the player that actually use the pronouns at all. So that's interesting, because it actually means that the pronoun support is, in one way, it is actually quite simple. But the problem is, in other languages, some languages don't even really have a resolution to what gender-neutral pronouns are. There was a bunch of controversy in France because I think it was Larousse, or maybe it was Robert. I don't remember. One of the dictionary people they decided that they were going to introduce a gender-neutral pronoun, IEL, and the French government basically said, "Nuh-uh, that's not your job. That's our job," because they actually have a language police in France. So if you ignore loc, it's easier, but really it's the pronouns aren't from a loc perspective, the pronouns aren't the problem. The problem is that you're really introducing a third or more gender, and you just need to figure out how to do that. God forbid that you actually wrote your dialogue system or your localization system under the hard-coded assumption that there were only two genders, and you're using a Boolean for your gender, so you're either male or not male, because then you have to go and fix all of that. I mean, they probably tried to ban English language. Okay, so let me see. What else we got that needs to be upped because it's blocking the tools? I think the J cut and the L cut. This one as well. This one probably. This one. Okay, so now if we, not that, the resort, yeah. Yeah, so the real thing is, you probably don't want the player's gender changing after the game starts. But if you allow them to set it at the beginning, though, actually, that being said, something that I've considered doing is literally always treating the player as whatever they are in the moment of the conversation. So if you imagine that you allow gender swapping mid-game, if you are male and you started romancing someone who is only going to romance a man, and you then put on your gender swap hat and now you are a woman, that the game just continues as if that was always possible, and it refers to as a woman and doesn't even. It doesn't make any correction for it. It just keeps the grammar correct. I don't know what would be involved in that. It would essentially just mean that you write every single line for loc and handle the pronouns and handle the verb tenses, but make no other allowance. So the person you're now romancing is still acting as if they are heterosexual, even though you are a woman and they are a woman, and it just keeps going. I don't know. I don't know how weird that would be. Yeah, we'll be doing pronouns. I mean, if you play something like Mech Warrior, which I think is the one that first got into big controversy for doing it, it really is something you're doing as a piece of identification for yourself, and it doesn't affect the game in any way. I don't think they ever use your pronouns, and it's just a way to say that this matters, and we allow you to pick it. And I think that's a nice touch. The reason why you can't just swap dialog lists, or the reason why it's an issue is because you have gotten into a plot state where you may have made branches and choices based upon the assumption that the player was one gender and now they're a different gender. So you either need to unwind those, or you just need to ignore that logical inconsistency. And I would be inclined to just ignore the logical inconsistency and just continue from the moment. Okay, so now we've gone through and we've upped the priority on everything that is blocking the toolpath. So let's keep a look. And so, as I said, medium is... Oh, let's actually go through. So three-way convert... Why are you not... Okay, so let's go through and just see what we need to do. And this is most of what you're doing in triage is going through bug by bug and making sure they're on the right person, they're well formed, and the priority and severity are set correctly. So three-way conversations. I mean, I know what that means, but I know what we're missing. staging, camera, cuts. So we actually need to do staging. Also blocking the tools. So guess what I'm doing, not Bill McWilliams. All right. Okay, so 3-way conversations, fine. We need to set tags on the dialog start. I'm not entirely sure this is blocking tools, but it might be. Need to auto advance, which it isn't right now. It's just sitting there. That's required for us getting the J and L cuts working. We're not resolving tags. Currently, yeah, we don't support non-silent protagonists. I want to have that in there because it's something, I'm not sure if we'll use it in high T and the high Cs, but it's something I want in the system. Honestly, I think give it 50 years and you can see it already happening because you get people using singular is a lot in, or at least maybe this is an Alberta redneck thing, but R as a verb tense seems to be disappearing around here. So you're getting a lot of is used both singular and plural. So I think give it 50 years and that might be the norm. R might just be gone. Or possibly, redneck Alberta, I don't know which. Okay. Yeah, I better make sure that this is There are some loc tools. There are some loc tools that are built into Unreal, but they are listed as being beta or listed as being not fully supported. I can't remember which. So I need to make sure that they're actually functional. Controller controls, I think I should get working pretty quickly. It can be very easy to allow them to one of your control schemes, either keyboard or mouse or controller, to bit rot into non-functionality. So I don't want to get into that habit. But I think it's reasonable to have it here. It's above most of the mediums because it's a can't chip, but it's below all of the make the tools not be a disaster part. Startup screen is honestly not that urgent, but it would make the game look a lot more real. It might be something that I just end up doing anyway. Same with real level art. Those are things that would add a degree of reality to the whole proceedings and probably make this a lot more interesting to watch. So we might do that anyway. This one probably should be upped to a high just to make sure in case it requires a change to the tools pipeline. And then allow overlap. I'm pretty sure it won't. Okay, just in case, I'm going to put it in the tools as well. Just in case. Okay, real level art, as I said, I mean, obviously we won't ship without real level art, but it's just work. So it fits in the just work part. Same with the putting real player in and the lip syncing. All of this is all linked together. I'm a little bit worried. I'm not going to up it, but I'm a little bit worried that this might require tools chains, but I would I would think that the dialogue waves, since they're specifically designed for this purpose, would have the ability to embed the lip syncing in there somewhere. Now I'm worried about that, but fine. The dialogue leaving the box is, honestly, I'm just gonna, it's bad, but you know what? We could potentially ship it. The reset, that's just a line of action that's not firing, that's fine. And then that probably, the loopback support probably is necessary for us to get the tools to work. So here we go. So unfortunately, what we've basically done, and then how about this is too quiet, whatever, we'll get to it. So unfortunately what we've done is, so we've accomplished the goal of triage. We've made sure things are well formed. We've gotten things in a priority order. But as you can see, because we've declared this particular thing a high, it's dragged a whole bunch of other things up with it because it was, all that stuff was blocked with it, which is sort of the point. But the problem is I've just given myself what is that? 12 high bugs, which isn't amazing, but it is a reality. A lot of stuff, the tools, the whole process is largely blocked by some horrifying tools, so we need to get the systems locked down enough that we can start the process of fixing that. So that's where we are next. That will be what I keep saying we, it'd be nice if it was a we. It's what I'll be working on for the next little while. And the next time we do this, hopefully we have something that looks a bit more real and a tools pipeline that doesn't make me want to cry every time I look at it. So that, hopefully this was interesting. Let me know in the comments if it was interesting. I'm going to take a second here and thank all my members. In fact, I'll do it this way. Let's see if that worked. Whoops. So if you are interested in becoming a member, there is a link below this. Also, I think because we're live, there's a little $sign somewhere that you can click on, and it will let you become a member. Obviously, these people help keep everything running. And mean that I actually have money to spend on art once we reach that point. So thank you to them, and thank you to you for joining me. I had planned to do this in the middle, but we didn't. So if you did find this interesting, thank you for letting me know. We will do this again, but obviously, despite the fact that it is called Dailies, one of me cannot support a true Dailies worth of content, so it probably is going to be more like monthly-ish. We will see. I think I will not do another one until we have either a piece of level art that I think is worth looking at, or a tools pipeline that is better. Hopefully both. Let me know if that was interesting in the comments or over in the chat. I think that will be where we finish for today. Thank you, everybody. Yes, exactly. I don't want to call them monthlies even, because I don't even know if we'll be able to do monthlies, to be perfectly frank. Goodbye, everybody.